The glass doors of Rivergate National Bank slid open with a soft hiss as Marcus Reed stepped inside. He was a tall, broad-shouldered black man in his late 40s, dressed in a charcoal suit cut so sharp it looked like it could draw blood. His polished shoes clicked against the marble floor, echoing with the quiet authority of someone who had walked into far bigger rooms than this. For Marcus, this day was supposed to mark the end of decades of grinding work. He had clawed his way up from nothing, from nights spent sleeping in his car while trying to keep a fledgling logistics company alive, to becoming the CEO of Reed Global Holdings, an empire with subsidiaries spanning technology, transport, and real estate. And now, after months of negotiations, he was walking into Rivergate Bank to finalize a $2.3 billion partnership, a deal that would not only redefine his company's future but place him among the most influential businessmen in America. But destiny had a cruel way of testing patience. As Marcus approached the teller counter, he offered a warm, professional smile. "Good morning. I'm here to meet with Mr. Donovan. He's expecting me." The teller, a young woman with icy blonde hair and a permanent frown etched across her pale face, didn't return the smile. Her nameplate read Karen Whitfield. She gave him a cursory glance, then looked him up and down as if measuring him against some invisible standard. Her lips curled into something between suspicion and disdain. "ID," she said flatly, snapping her fingers toward him. Marcus kept his composure. He had dealt with people like this before, people who saw his skin before they saw his success. Calmly, he reached into his wallet and placed his driver's license on the counter. Karen picked it up, studied it for no more than a second, then scoffed. "This doesn't look right. You're here for an appointment?" "Yes," Marcus replied evenly. "With Mr. Donovan, the senior director. He should be." Before he could finish, she tossed his ID onto the floor as if it were trash. The plastic card clattered against the polished marble and slid near Marcus's shoes. The room went still. A nearby security guard shifted uncomfortably. Two customers waiting in line stared, whispering under their breath. "Pick it up," Karen said coldly. "And next time, don't waste our time with fake stories. People like you don't have appointments with senior directors." Marcus bent slowly, his jaw tightening as he retrieved his ID. His hands trembled, not with anger, but with restraint. He stood back up, locking eyes with her. Inside him, a storm raged. He thought of every night he had worked while others slept, of the racism he had endured in boardrooms where he was always the only black man at the table. And now, here he was, being told in front of strangers that he didn't belong. For a moment, Marcus wanted to snap, to unleash the fury building inside him. But instead, he smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that unsettled Karen more than any outburst ever could. "Thank you," he said softly, sliding his ID back into his wallet. "I'll make sure Mr. Donovan knows about this warm welcome." Karen rolled her eyes. "Sure. Whatever you say." She didn't realize that her arrogance had just set the stage for her own undoing. Because Marcus Reed wasn't just another client. In less than an hour, he was about to sign papers that would make his company the single largest investor in Rivergate Bank. And that meant he wouldn't just be a client, he would be, in many ways, her boss's boss. And he intended to teach her a lesson she would never forget. Marcus didn't storm out. He didn't raise his voice or demand a manager. That would have been too easy, too predictable. Instead, he simply turned and walked deeper into the bank's marble hall, his footsteps echoing with a calm authority that unsettled the people who had just witnessed his humiliation. Karen smirked behind the counter, whispering to the coworker beside her. "Can you believe the nerve? Fake ID, fake appointment. Always trying something." But her smirk faded when the glass doors at the far end of the lobby opened again, this time revealing Mr. Thomas Donovan, the silver-haired senior director of Rivergate Bank. He spotted Marcus immediately and hurried forward with a wide smile, hand outstretched. "Marcus! My friend! I'm so glad you're here," Donovan said, his voice booming across the lobby. He shook Marcus's hand firmly. "Everything's ready upstairs. The board is waiting. Karen froze. The name, Marcus. The handshake. The respect in Donovan's voice. Her blood ran cold. Donovan turned, gesturing toward the elevators. Let's not keep them waiting. After all, this is the deal of the decade. Gasps rippled through the lobby. A few customers turned to look at Karen, whose face had drained of color. She shifted uncomfortably, realizing that the man she had just insulted, humiliated, was not only telling the truth but about to close a deal worth more money than she could comprehend. Marcus glanced back at her, just for a second. Not a glare. Not even a smirk. Just that same quiet, deliberate smile. Then he followed Donovan toward the elevators. Upstairs, the atmosphere was entirely different. The boardroom was a world of glass walls, mahogany tables, and panoramic views of the city skyline. Bank executives, dressed in tailored suits, stood as Marcus entered. He commanded the room without trying, his calm confidence radiating stronger than any speech could. "Gentlemen, ladies," Donovan announced, "allow me to present Mr. Marcus Reed, CEO of Reed Global Holdings. Today we finalized the $2.3 billion partnership that will take Rivergate Bank into the future." Applause filled the room. Folders were passed around, contracts laid out, and champagne bottles chilled in anticipation. But Marcus wasn't thinking about the champagne. He was thinking about the lobby below, the way his ID had clattered against the marble, the sound of whispered laughter at his expense. So when the documents were signed, when the ink was still drying on a partnership that made his company the largest investor in Rivergate Bank, Marcus leaned toward Donovan. "There's one matter I'd like addressed immediately," he said in a low but firm voice. Donovan raised an eyebrow. "Of course. Anything." Marcus nodded toward the lobby below. "A teller. Blonde hair, name tag said Whitfield. She threw my ID on the floor and told me men like me don't meet with directors." The room fell silent. Executives exchanged uneasy glances. Donovan's face darkened. Unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. Consider it handled. But Marcus wasn't finished. "I don't want her fired, not yet. Let her keep working. I want her to understand, slowly, exactly who she disrespected today. Sometimes, silence teaches louder than shouting." There it was, the silent revenge. Not anger, not screaming. Just patience, power, and position. When Marcus left the boardroom, he didn't take the executive elevator. He returned to the main lobby deliberately, where Karen sat stiffly at her station. Her coworker whispered nervously, trying not to stare. Donovan walked beside him, explaining details of the upcoming press release in a voice loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "And of course, Marcus, as our largest investor, your influence here will be substantial. You'll have priority access to every division, direct oversight on growth strategy, and permanent seats on the advisory board." Marcus smiled, meeting Karen's wide eyes as he adjusted his cufflinks. "Good," he said calmly. "I like to be hands-on." Karen swallowed hard, her face red with humiliation. She suddenly understood. The man she had treated like dirt wasn't just her client. He was the bank now. And Marcus intended to make sure she never forgot it. The following weeks at Rivergate Bank were unlike anything Karen Whitfield had ever experienced. Every morning, she arrived at her teller station, heart racing, unsure if today would be the day she was called upstairs. Her coworkers whispered more than usual, often sneaking glances at her when Marcus's name appeared in emails or board announcements. She had Googled him the night after the incident, desperate to confirm what she had overheard. The results stunned her. Marcus Reed, self-made billionaire. CEO of Reed Global Holdings. Philanthropist who had donated millions to inner-city schools and hospitals. A man whose story had been covered in Forbes, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal. And she, Karen Whitfield, had thrown his ID on the floor like he was nothing. The shame ate at her. Customers seemed to notice her sudden hesitancy, the way her fake confidence had withered. She forced smiles, stumbled over words, and dreaded every black client who approached her window. Marcus, meanwhile, didn't acknowledge her. He didn't need to. His presence lingered in the bank like an invisible storm cloud. Every so often, he walked through the lobby, sometimes with Donovan, sometimes with other directors, discussing plans that were now his plans too. He never said a word to Karen. He didn't have to. His silence was a blade sharper than anything she could have imagined. Then came the day of the press conference. The bank's board assembled in the atrium, journalists and cameras filling the space. Karen stood at her station, frozen, as the podium was set up just feet from where she sat. Donovan stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us as we announce the most significant partnership in Rivergate Bank's history. Please welcome our largest investor and new advisory board leader, Mr. Marcus Reed." Applause thundered. Cameras flashed. Marcus walked to the podium with the ease of a man who had faced worse storms and come out stronger every time. He looked over the crowd, over the flashing lights, and, just briefly, his eyes landed on Karen. She shifted in her chair, her stomach twisting. Marcus began. "When I started my first company," he said, voice steady, "people laughed at me. They told me I didn't belong in boardrooms, that my ideas were impossible. But what they didn't know was that impossible is only a word used by people who quit too soon. I didn't quit. And today, I stand before you, proud not just of my success, but of what it represents, opportunity for those who've been told they don't belong." The crowd cheered, but Marcus wasn't finished. "This bank will change. It will not just be a place for numbers and money, but for respect. Every client who walks through these doors deserves dignity, whether they hold $1 or $1 billion. That's the standard. That's the promise." The applause grew louder, echoing through the marble halls. Cameras swiveled, capturing every word. Karen's face burned. She knew, without him naming her, that his words were directed at her as much as anyone. But instead of dragging her name through the mud, Marcus had done something far worse. He had held up a mirror. After the conference ended, as people dispersed, Marcus walked through the lobby again. Reporters swarmed him, executives congratulated him, and cameras trailed his every move. But as he passed Karen's station, he paused. The crowd hushed. Karen stood, trembling, trying to find words. "Mr. Reed. I'm sorry. I didn't know." Marcus held up a hand gently, stopping her. His face was calm, almost kind. "You didn't need to know who I was," he said softly, so only she could hear. "All you needed to know was how to treat another human being." And with that, he walked on, leaving her standing there in silence, broken by the weight of her own prejudice. Months later, Karen quietly resigned. Rumor had it she couldn't handle the whispers, the shame, the constant reminder of her mistake. Marcus never asked for her dismissal. He didn't need to. Because her punishment hadn't been losing her job, it had been losing her pride. And Marcus? He didn't dwell on her. He had bigger dreams to chase, bigger mountains to climb. But he never forgot the lesson she had handed him, wrapped in humiliation, that the strongest revenge isn't anger, or shouting, or retaliation. It's power. Silent, undeniable power. And as Marcus Reed stood in his corner office months later, overlooking the city skyline, he knew he had turned one woman's disrespect into history. The man once underestimated had become unstoppable.